see all of you. I know it's Easter weekend, so I know there's people out and about. Hoping everybody has a happy, safe Easter. But we'll go ahead and get started. We got kind of a special treat today. I feel nervous with the camera pointing at me over here. Can't be recording me. So let's go ahead and start our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody would stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, this point, today we'll do things very similar. I've made a couple of adjustments on the agenda because we have a special treat for our guest speaker. So here in a minute I'll have Mr. Dunn stand up and kind of introduce Mr. Choate, who's driven a good little distance this morning to be here with us. So before we get into that, let's see if we have any new guest or somebody that's never been here before. I know one person. You get to tell them your name and who you are to me.
I'm Barney Stone. Jonathan's father-in-law.
Yes, my father-in-law gets to be with us today. So I'd like to give him some credit because I've always loved airplanes and flying, but never knew that regular people, I said normal earlier than someone said said regular people can actually do it. It is, it does cost money and it is, it takes up your time, but boy, if you want to, it's something that is attainable. So I appreciate him for kind of getting me into it, and we're glad that he gets to come sit and visit with us this morning. So, but it appears that everybody else is, except for our guest speaker and his lovely wife. Mr. Dunn, did you just want to quickly introduce our guest speaker?
No, just going up. I'll do it for you.
Okay, do that in just a minute. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get all of the business stuff out of the way first. Sometimes we put new and old business at the end. But Mr. Choate is, I want to make sure that I don't get into his time. Like I said, he's driven in good ways and has a lot of good information to share with his young pilots and more experienced pilots or any that are in here training to become pilots. He's going to have a wealth of information to help us, hopefully by the time we leave here today, to be safer as we get in the air. So first part of business is our secretary's report. I did pass out the minutes from March. And so I hope you've had a chance to look at that. I also included them in my email that was sent out to all the members. Any questions about that and the minutes from last month?
Motion to approve is presented.
Motion to approve by Winberry. And a second by Dunn. All approve?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next is Mr. Walker, our treasurer's report.
Treasury report, we have, as you know, 3 accounts. Our operating fund account, we have $8,062 for operating fund. We have a fuel account, a little over $1,000, $1,099 in our fuel account. And then finally our aviation account, the residual from this account, still at $6,000 in that account. We have no unusual expenses for this month or past month, just normal bills of the electricity and the water. And so all bills are paid, and that's our treasury report.
Approval.
Motion to approve by Mr. Bartlett. Any second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Easter.
Easter.
Yes. Easter.
Easter. How you spell that one? Easter. All right. So next, Mr. Dunn, do you have something on anything on the annual report?
All good.
All good.
All cool.
And Young Eagles report, I know Bailey's not here today. We did cancel our...
Well, and I'm not going to speak out of line.
Yes,
We
sir.
had a Young Eagles scheduled, but we did have one pilot show up to fly Young Eagles.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure how many Young Eagles we flew.
4.
4 ringing bells, right?
Yeah.
As you recognize Don Lindberry.
Mr. Lindberry.
Yeah.
And he flew 4 Young Eagles.
So 4 Young Eagles this past weekend. Okay, very good. I don't know if we're going to do an event next month or not. That is a possibility, so just be on the lookout for that. I'll send out an email, or Bailey will send out an email to discuss next month and what day that would be. Typically, it's about the
Second
second second weekend, so we'll watch for weather and plan for that, so we can get some more kids up in there. So, okay. Next, I put this on the agenda. I did not personally know Mr. Don Hall. Get a show of hands in here who knew Mr. Hall. Apparently, what I've been told, was a kind of a founding member of our local EAA chapter. So, just wanted to mention his name today. And there was a memorial service.
Huge turnout.
Okay, good.
Huge turnout.
And that was here at the
At the
Young
pavilion,
Pavilion.
you bet.
And you were even mentioned as the pallbearer.
Yeah, and one of the speakers. Yeah, it was, and Zimmer was too. But a lot of us had flown with Hall a lot, and he had, in the early part of when we first moved the chapter over to Lufkin from NAC,
Yes, sir.
we did a lot of flying, and Hall was always part of that. So, yeah, it was a huge turnout. Really good memorial.
Well, good. Good. It said he was, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I had brought the obituary that he was 87 years old. And was a U.S. Coast Guard veteran. So just wanted to make sure to bring that up today to honor him.
You bet.
Say sorry for the loss of those of you that knew him. And we appreciate what he's done for the club. And may not have any in here today, but I also want to make sure if there are any members that have any type of ratings or recognition, to make sure we don't overlook anybody that made any progress on training. A big part of why we're here is to celebrate the good things that go on and the learning that we do.
I don't know if we covered it previous year, but we do have an IFR person that passed their IFR check right a while back.
Yes.
I don't know if we did that or not.
You got to come ring the bell then,
Lewis
if you
just
don't want to.
ring the silver bell. He
You
hasn't
better-
rung
you
the silver
better
bell.
Ring it for me, I got a knee that's.
I'll ring it for you.
He operates.
I'll ring the bell anytime I can.
I want to recognize him for his IFR check.
Yeah.
I just think it's very, very important that we continue to recognize people as they continue to, grow in their journey through aviation, because that's, one reason we're here. Yes, it's a business meeting, but more importantly, we're here to learn and become better pilots. And so when we have success, it's very important to recognize those. All right, and this is where the agenda kind of changed from normal. Old business. Last month, we brought up the installation of a supplied ATC antenna. I didn't know if that had happened yet, or if there was progress. Or
Do you mean to speak to that?
Yeah.
A guy named Keith Jones is really excited about, he listens to podcasts, he also listens to ATC, Houston, Conroe, he just, one of those guys that likes to listen to control tower stuff. So he has talked to the guy that helps, whatever company this is, that broadcast ATC, and the guy sent him an antenna and sent him some other wiring and stuff, and so the club got approval for him to install an antenna here, so it can pick up all the traffic from frequency 123.0 and put it on the internet. So we're going to provide him an internet link, and he's going to provide the antenna to be mounted on this building. And another one of our members, Chad Lee, has got access to a bucket truck, and so he's going to provide the bucket truck, and Keith is going to get all of his stuff together, and we're going to get it wired up and then hook into our internet feed here. And so you can be going down the road in Addison or Dallas and listen to 123.0 at Lufkin and hear who's flying around. So pretty neat deal.
And it's on ATC Live, I think, which
Right.
is, it's an app. You can either use an app on your cell phone
On the web.
or on the web, and you can do that right now if you want to. If none of you have ever done it, you can go on there and listen to airports all across the country. I'm just like that. I love to listen to.
Well, you're one of those guys.
I am.
Yeah.
My wife gets upset at his daughter about the radio in the house. She's like, can you turn that thing down? It's like, oh, I missed something. So, do we know how long?
So, yeah, we're, it's just waiting for, he's waiting on some wiring, because we had to figure out how we're gonna go with it, and so we're sending him some wiring, and then we're gonna plan a day to come out here and put it all in. So
Awesome. Good deal.
it's in the works.
Whenever it gets up and rolling, before the next meeting, we'll let you guys know, let y'all know how to access that. So I'm excited about that. Is there any new, before we get into our fund program, is there any new business that anybody want to bring up today or discuss? No?
Do you want to wait till announce the
Why don't you
two
go
Critter
ahead
Lodge?
and just bring that up? since
Yeah,
we-
Critters Lodge, there's 5 weekends in this month, and Critters Lodge is the last weekend, the 29th, 30th, and 1st of the month. It starts on Friday night, Saturday, and then Sunday. They feed everybody Friday night, 3 meals on Saturday, and then Sunday morning, and it's a great fly-in. For anybody that's ever been there, I've never missed one, and it's a great fly-in. Now, next weekend, we've got a poker run that Chapter 972 is putting on, and if you've never been on a poker run before, it's a blast. They got 5 different airports going to. They're going to Jacksonville, Mineola, Gladewater, Palestine, and at each location, you will pick up a card and prove that you went to the airport. And then the last location is Arrow Estates there at Lake Palestine. Land there, and then they've got a end of the runway gumbo lunch that they're feeding everybody. So, and that is a Young Eagles benefit thing that they're drawing money. It's a $50 fee to get in, and then they're gonna split the pot at the end. So.
So do you take your 5 cards and whoever makes the bet, I guess you pick them at random or?
No, they're going to issue. You get a card at each airport where you land, and usually it's at the terminal, and they will give you a card in an envelope usually, and then you take it, and then at the end of the run, you decide whether or not you you won any money or not. But it is a fun thing. We've had one here before at this chapter. It's been a number of years back, but you have to go to all 5 locations and to qualify. Yeah, but it's fun.
And that's at 972?
972, chapter 972, and I will send you the link,
Okay.
Jonathan, and you can send it out to people so everybody will have the poster for it.
And
So
that's next weekend.
next weekend on Saturday, it starts from 8. Need to get started early, 8 to 12, and then after 12 to 1 or so, they're feeding gumbo at Arrow Estates.
And that chapter over there is famous for their runway gumbo.
Oh yeah,
They make a pot of roux.
Yeah.
They proceed to cook that thing
yeah,
all morning long, and I have been on the cooking detail on that one before.
yeah.
It was hard not to eat.
Used to have it in Gladewater all the time.
All the
Yeah,
time.
and we'd go to Gladewater and eat. This time at Arrow Estates is a flying community. They're just outside of Frankston on Lake Palestine. It's a great strip. 9 and 27, it's a grass strip, but it's a great strip. And then they're going to have the gumbo lunch down by the lake. They've got a little park down at the end of the runway by the lake. So.
But the Arrow Estates is a grass strip.
Yeah. Yeah. Grass strip.
Oh,
About 2,700, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty close to 3,000, and it's usually land uphill and take off downhill, but it's easy. It's an easy strip to land on. Come in over the lake, or you can get right on the end of the runway.
Thank you for bringing that up. and
Yeah,
mentioning
no
that.
problem.
That's next weekend.
Next weekend. Yeah.
On the day that the United States of America has the prayer, the first Thursday of May, National Day of Prayer, there is a group of people called Prayer Flight that flies over the state, each state capital. We don't have anybody flying over the Texas Capitol yet, but looking for volunteers. And it would be strictly, you go, you fly, you pray, and then you go back home. So,
That's something they do every year,
every year. Yes, sir.
and they do that in every state.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the turnout number is for Texas? Or?
Usually we have 5 to 12 people flying in Texas. So far, since I have become the coordinator for Texas, I'm kind of falling down on the job. I only have none.
So that is the first Thursday of May.
Yes, sir.
Very good. if you're interested in that, please get with Mr. Owen. Sounds like a pretty neat thing to do and neat opportunity.
You know, I have a flyer I can send to you. It gives all the details.
All right, well, this time I'm going to get out of the way here, and we have a very special guest speaker with us that Mr. Dunn is going to introduce to us.
You bet. So, a little over 2 years ago, back in September of, what was the year?
2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't do math. He told me don't ever do math in public. Didn't you?
Our pastor says that from the pulpit all the time for good reason. But Kent said to me, he said, hey, Jeremy, Ross and I are going to go up to Dallas. We're going to sit in a 10-day class for CFI training. I kind of left out, you know. I said, y'all can't go up there without me, so I quickly signed up. A place called Thrust Flight. You'll see us wearing their colors today. So you know how when the King's in town, they always fly the flag? King's in town, we flew the flag day. But Thrust Flight was a newer flight training institute up there that they had started up. Went up there unknowing of what to expect. It's based on Addison. Phenomenal facility up there. Kent and I walk in, and I have to say we were absolutely the two oldest guys in the class, by far. I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but had a great group of people, probably about 30, that ranged anywhere from early 20s on up through whatever. And really interesting to go through this class, and I will say that Bob came in there with a wealth of information. He can tell you more about it, but has been the lead instructor at American Flyers. They pulled him over to Thrust. If you've been, anybody been to American Flyers? Okay, a couple of you. Good institution, but Thrust has now pulled that up quite a bit. And Bob and his crew made it very exciting to go through. They've got aircraft on field as well. But I'll tell you, not only the academics of what was needed to get through that class, but an infusion of humor that would keep you on your toes, stories, and then would call upon us in class that, oh, in the next 30 minutes, Mike, you're up. You need a story. So welcome Bob and his humor and depth of knowledge in aviation. Bob?
Thanks, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I want to thank Jonathan for making the time here for me to present, and especially want to thank Mark and Kent for wearing the colors and doing that. I should have worn mine as well. Would have been a nice, would have been a three of a kind. So,
Well, you do have something on your logo. What is that?
well, that's a Cessna Cardinal
Oh, what?
177.
What are those?
Cardinal. It's funny that we're going to talk about things again. We'll probably talk about the Cardinal as well. So, you know, I'd like to cover kind of a range of topics today. Let me get an idea of who's in the room first. How many in the room are airplane owners? Okay, great, majority, that's very good. Is anybody who is not a licensed pilot currently? Okay, got a couple, and you're the father-in-law, so we understand that. Okay, good. So we've pretty much got all pilots, some rent, some own, and so forth. Are we, anybody have a twin driver in here? Okay, and, okay. So you'll probably get that slide, and nobody else will. All right. Great, okay. So the positioning of my conversation with you today is kind of looking back from a view from the right seat. So let me start by doing a little bit of an introduction to myself, and let's take a look at how that works. That is there. Okay, there we go. So who am I? Okay, so I'm a pilot just like you, and I've been a flight instructor for over 10 years. And oh, that's fine. Is everyone good with that? Yeah. Okay, flight instructor for over 10 years. I established and taught a Flight Instructor Academy. I actually taught the Flyers, American Flyers Flight Instructor Academy for 4 years. And then I went over and I enjoyed the Flyers very much. I enjoyed the Academy. I graduated with about 400 CFIs at that one. But I had some things I wanted to do with education, and the Flyers is kind of very bureaucratic in terms of how they approach things. Obviously what you teach has to be approved by the FAA, but within that parameter, which is actually pretty broad because they really want you to know the stuff. I established a program and taught there at Thrust Flight for several years. And we just really had a ball. I just recently retired from that. There's some other people doing that now. and I haven't had the heart to go back and see what it's like. But I really enjoyed that. I graduated over 1,000 CFIs in the last year. I've signed off personally over 200 CFIs, and it's just been a ball. Beyond that, I've signed off several hundred private pilots. I don't know how many commercial pilots, not hundreds. And instrument ratings like popcorn. And it's just been a great trip. I retired from my professional job at 63, and I was a vice president at High Tech. Global span, did all that stuff, and you know something? I can't even remember what I did. It doesn't matter. The only thing I remember is the last 10 years of flying and having a great time as a flight instructor. It's just been wonderful. I was just awarded the FAA Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award.
Wow.
That's for 50 years of safe aviation. Safe aviation. And they were giving me this award. I felt a little guilty because I've done a few things before that weren't that safe. Maybe I sped running occasionally, which I'm not going to do anymore, and there are other things. But based on 50 years of accident-free flight and no bad marks against my record, they awarded me this. It was a very nice ceremony. FAA presented it to me at a restaurant. I was surrounded by my thrust flight contemporaries, Patrick and Liz and all the gang over there, and had a great time. I'm also an aircraft owner. I own a Cardinal 177. But so I'm here today as someone who's interested in you, actually all of you, and being safe pilots, proficient pilots, confident and capable. So let's take a look at the first question I have here is, anybody recognize that airplane? Oh my God, that's a Cessna Cardinal. So that's my aircraft. The original plan today was for me to fly in. I was really looking forward to shooting the RNAV. My plane, as you can see from the panel, that's a new panel. We just put that in. I'm very capable IFR. My wife and I spent the summer on the East Coast. We flew out and flew back IFR both ways on the Massachusetts area and had a great time. However, based on the plane being in for some maintenance and some other family issues I've been dealing with, I haven't had time to stay current. So I'm at the point I need an IPC. So I wasn't able to get an IPC. Whereas I could have flown this today, filed and flown and been in and showing off my airplane, which of course I love to do. But we drove instead, which was actually very nice because I've actually never driven through the hilly part of Texas. I'm on the part of Texas that's just one big emergency landing field. And so I came out here. I want you to take a look at the specs on this plane for a little bit, just a minute. It's a 2,500 pound gross, 180 horsepower engine. Empty weight's 1523, okay? So if I add full fuel, it's 1811, so it's 1811, which means, you're gonna love it, 689 for the payload, which means I can put people, bags, gold bars, whatever you want. I got 689 pounds of it. And we were chock-a-block in the plane flying back to Massachusetts, so we were just stuffed to the gills. I couldn't put another thing in there. I was still 6,500 pounds under gross. It's a great aircraft. And contrast that with the 172s I fly as a flight instructor. They've got about a 525 pound payload, and which is not bad for a training plane. And the 172 is a great airplane. But that's three people. That's three people, and very few bags. So for a cross-country mission, I like these big numbers on this airplane. Now, we're going to come back to that thought in another context. By the way, I designed that paint job, and as you might have known, if you know Kent, he designed his paint job. Yeah, it's the thing Cardinal owners tend to do this. Okay? So if we know what the Cardinal is, I just wonder, what is this airplane? Who recognizes that?
Ugly.
Ugly. It's one of the ugliest airplanes. It's one of the 10 ugliest airplanes. That's right. Twin Champ. Oh, you are so close. It is a Twin Champ. It's the collaboration between Valanca and Champion Aircraft, where they brought out this twin. It was built for the military training market. Never took off. Pardon the pun. And there's only a few of them made. There's 3 or 4 of them still flying, and that's one of them. I just wanted to share that with you. In case you ran across one, you can say, oh, One of them Aronica Blanca twins, yeah. And just try to look very knowledgeable when you do that. Okay, we should know what that is.
170.
What is it?
170?
Either Colt or Tri-Creek.
Okay, it is a Colt, exactly right. The reason we know it's a Colt is because it doesn't have the third window in the back and the back door on that side. Because remember, Tri-Pacer's got the two doors. Any Tri-Pacer owners here? Any owned a Tri-Pacer?
My dad did.
Hmm?
My dad did.
Yep. Tri-Pacers are nice airplanes. There's kind of two interesting things about Tri-Pacers. For example, if I was quizzing people and say, okay, I'm a Tri-Pacer driver, what am I doing? I'm starting the engine. Seriously, I'm starting the engine because the button is down under the front seat and the mags are over here. So, and the other thing, they have a Johnson bar for the brakes. So you don't have left right, you got the Johnson bar. It works just fine. If it was a drum and floor, you probably know what comes that. So that's the Colt. They were built till about 1954. And they typically had 108 Lycoming in there, but some of them have been upgraded. That's a very nice, all fabric airplanes. Aha, now what's this one here?
Almost looks like an extra, but it's not.
Is there any plane recently that's been on the market for a little while? It's both as a light sport and as a certificated airplane that looks something like that? Yeah, Technium kind of looks like that, doesn't it? This is the inspiration for the Technium. This is the Partenavia P68. This was a fixed prop, that's either 160s or 180s, airplane, twin, tri-gear, fixed gear, and they're pretty nice little aircraft. They carry a pretty good load. They're very comfortable, and but they don't compare with the beach series twins. But in case you see one of these, now you know what it is, a Partenavia P68. And we know what this one is, don't we? Aircoupe. Now, you're exactly right. This is the Alon ERCOUPE as opposed to the AIRCOUPE. So this, remember, Aircoupes were built by who? Ernie, Alon. What's that guy with the tail that looked kind of funny? Yeah. And then the Cadet A10. Okay, Mooney made it for a couple of years. Okay, so this is an interesting airplane. Fred Week is the designer of this airplane, and I can't remember if it's Weik or Week, but he's quite an amazing guy. This was the first commercially available tri-gear airplane. It had some interesting characteristics. It wouldn't stall, it wouldn't spin, and it didn't have a maximum demonstrated crosswind component. Why? Because it lands in a crowd. If the wind's coming this way and the runway's like this, you land like this, and the gear straightens you out, just like the B-52. You've all flown the B-52, I'm sure. Yeah. And so this was quite an innovation for the time, and this was in 1946, 1947. And ever since then, we seem to have moved away from that, because now our planes spin and they're running crosswind gear and all that. They actually made this one. This is a 62 model. You could get that with the traditional gear. That's the crosswind gear. You could get that with traditional gear. When Piper aircraft, they were building the Comanche, the Piper Tri-Pacer, they were building the Colt, that whole series of welded steel tube aircraft. One day, the river outside the plant flooded the property and destroyed the jigs. It was like, Houston, we have a little problem here, what do we do? So they ran over, and on the wall there's a big red button, they hit it, the panic button, panicked, and a little card fell out, they picked it up and said, call Fred Week. They called Fred, and he came over, and in no time, literally the fastest time you can imagine, he designed the entire series of Piper, the Cherokee, the 180, the 235, and they all have different names now, as monocoque fuselages using common parts, and that saved Piper. And that's why there's nobody's building new Pipers steel tube anymore. But there's a great short-wing Piper club. Anybody fly Piper here? Piper, what have you got? 180. 180? Solid airplane, fantastic airplane. What do you find?
Seminole.
Seminole? Yeah. Oh, nice aircraft. Yeah, nice aircraft. Yeah, you got two of those to help.
Malibu
Oh, Malibu, okay.
That must be nice.
You know, it's funny, because remember back in the day, we all remember this, Cessna had a whole fleet of twins, you remember? Beechcraft had a whole fleet of twins, and Piper had a whole fleet of twins. And now, if there's one or two manufactured by hand, we're lucky that that's the case.
Does the aircraft have the rudder pedal?
So the rudder cable, you can optionally get the rudder pedals in it. The regular one came only with a foot brake on the floor and no rudder pedals, and then you could, that was an option you could get. And they don't turn the same way at the same time. They turn at a different rate, and you could get those. And if you got the spring steel gear, you have it automatically. So a lot of those around. Let's take a look at what should we discuss. Okay, let's take a look. Here's what I was thinking. I'm not here to tell you my stories or put you on the spot, so I haven't been in the spot yet. Good, I'm doing well. I'm not here to tell jokes. Oh, well, okay, well, maybe a few jokes. We might do some. And I'm here to talk about you, and I'm here to talk about the perspective of a flight instructor from the right seat. Now, so what I'm going to tell you is kind of a congealing of things that I've seen that I'd like to share with people. It's things that if I wish you remembered these things, here's some things I wish you'd remember. So let's start out, shall we? I want to talk about checklists. Checklists. So I was observing, students. I observed pilots that I fly with for biannuals. I observed myself, and whenever I screw a checklist up, it's usually because I'm in a hurry. And you know something? I start out with the very best of intentions, and I'm not in a hurry. And then I look behind me, and there's 3 guys behind me in the run-up area. And I really feel the pressure. But I've been forcing myself to really do it right. And my checklist has gotten longer now because of the incorporation of the whole new sets of radios on all these kind of autopilots and things. And so I want to encourage you to do that. One of the things that drives me nuts as a flight instructor, and this isn't one I would expect to see with you. It's something you'll see with students. And if you're flying with new pilots, keep an eye on them. They're going down. We're doing our checklist, and we're doing this. And they're checking it. Do something. They're reading and checking. Use the read and verify method. And they get down to radios, check, and they just go like that. That was it. Radios, check. What they did was they simply looked at the nav comm radio, and they had the frequency set, and they were happy. But as I recall, everything in that center stack is a radio. You have a GPS, you might have a NAVCOM, you might have a transponder. Of course, you have to have a transponder with ADS-B, unless you're flying where that's not required. Those are all radios. You want to check those all, and make sure to do that. I also want to mention that your cruise checklist misses you. When's the last time that you actually pulled out and looked at that cruise checklist? Okay? I mean, I'm telling you, I do this too. So I have been forcing myself recently to make sure that I don't put my checklist away. I hand it to my wife, who's she's not my co-pilot because she doesn't actually fly the plane, but she helps in terms of organizational and photography. She's the best. And so I can always get my checklist back in a hurry. So this is an important point. When you fly, you should take a wife, mistress, concubine, significant other, or another pilot to help you, assist you in the cockpit's resource management process. Okay? One of the things that we do on check rides, one of the things we do with students, if you're taking a flight review, the all of the FRs, you're going to get something happen. There's going to be an electrical issue. There's going to be a gear issue. There's going to be something. So whenever you have that checklist with you, and remember the rule, if I'm high, I'm going to use the checklist. If I'm low, I'm going to do the flow, right? Because I don't have time. At 2,000 feet and everything goes dark, I'm not going to pull out the checklist and go, what page am I on? Because I want the altitude. And but what I will do is I will take my checklist, and when I put it away, I'll have folded it or tabbed it to the emergency section. So because I know I'm going to get that with a biannual, so I can pull that right out and start that. How many of you have personalized your checklists in your airplane? Nobody? Okay. Well, you certainly have to have the stuff the manufacturer has there. But for example, that doesn't mean you can't put other things in there. Remember back when Cessna made the 172 RG? I've flown RGs a lot, because remember, they were made really to fulfill a requirement, a commercial requirement. the commercial requirement for schools. And they had the makings of being very, very good airplanes, but the ones that were in the training fleet until they took the rule away about having to have a retractable gear for the commercial pilot, were pretty beat. And they were very high maintenance airplanes. And one of the maintenance items on them was they would tend to blow alternators. Now, they really weren't blowing the alternators, they were blowing the diodes, which is the little thing that causes the AC generating alternator to convert it to DC. And one way to prevent that from happening was to simply put it on battery, start the engine, and then bring the alternator online. So you could bypass any spurious electronic interference and so forth, and do that. So that's an example of something you could personalize on your checklist. I've had to personalize mine because, for example, I don't have a full Garmin suite. I've got some Avidyne, I've got some Garmin, I've got some TrueTrack, and so the integration of them in a free flight, I have to kind of insert that in the right order. So I've created a plastic checklist for me, and it's color coded, so I have an emergency page and so forth. But give that some thought to do that, because it just really helps you find stuff fast. CFIs and the FAA love checklists, and in fact, in talking with the DPs about, and most of what they're telling me they see in regard to new students, but to some extent it applies to us as well. A couple of the big failings they see are lack of use of checklist. And again, why? Because we get complacent. We know our airplane really well, right? We know our airplane very well. And the other one they talked about was capability in crosswind landings, which we'll talk about as well. So checklist. So food for thought for checklist. Give that some thought, and beware if you're flying with the FAA. You know, don't not rehearse. Don't you want to see that yet? Okay, control movement on takeoff. This is an interesting one. For example, have you ever flown with anyone that does this? So here I am, I'm taking off on the runway, I've got my nose up, I've started my climb out, and then for some reason, the airplane does that. Or taking off with someone, I'm climbing out, and instead of pitching back to VY, because I probably rotated like that, I have to pitch down to VY, they're going the other way. That would be the wrong way to go, right? Wrong way to go. So think about this. For the Cessna 100 series aircraft, for the Piper, Cherokee series aircraft, after rotation, I've initiated my climb out, the next control movement is always forward. If it's not, then something's wrong. Okay, you're going to say, hey Bob, what about short field? Okay, you may have some little minor adjusting in short field, but think about it, you're really slow. Remember slow flight? I'm slow, so that means a very small movement of the yoke has a huge change in airspeed, right? So that's not a big change on the yoke, but I've had a small one. Sure, I can do some fine tuning on the short field takeoff, but if I'm in a regular takeoff and I'm pitching for VX or VY, that should be a smooth move forward and not a smooth move back. So what can help me on these? What can help me on these climbs? Well, we were all taught to look at airspeed and rate. So if I'm taking off at VY and knowing my airplane, I would expect that I'm going to be at full power. And what am I going to climb out in a 172? 80 knots, 74, 80 knots, something around there? Okay? And I'm going to have 500 feet per minute on the dial. Okay? So those are the things that we taught, and we use those today. We probably use it in any airplane we have, whether it's a Bonanza, whether it's a Party. We use them. I want to introduce another one. I want you to think about this. Degrees up on the attitude indicator. So this is a really, really good one, especially for these short field, climb outs. If you have rotated, moved your yoke forward to your VY, got my airspeed, got my rate of climb. Take a look at the AI. What are you? 172, you're probably around, most 172s around 7 degrees. You're probably 7 degrees up bar on your attitude indicator. Okay, that becomes very helpful. Check it out at VX. That's a very helpful item to help you pitch to when you're doing a VX takeoff. And it's a great third reference, and it may help, especially if you're if you move the throttle, part of the yoke around a lot, it might help. The last one is the mental picture. So, because we've already, with our planes, we may not have done this consciously, but when we're flying, we formed a mental picture of what that attitude looks like. So we really have 1, 2, 3, 4 items that are going to really help us peg this rate of climb, the proper rate of climb, what that attitude looks like. Thrust flight, 172 was an R model. It was a decked R model. Most of the R models were decked, and it was a demo flight. The pilot's name was Stephen. He was teaching the private pilot class. He went through my flight instructor academy. He already had an offer from the airlines. Life was going to be good. He had 2 female passengers, and hot day, full fuel, plane would require a weight and balance, an approved weight and balance by a flight instructor before you take off. So he's a flight instructor, he does it, he still has to have approved. He was within weight and balance. Stephen took off and went up, and the witnesses all collaborate that the plane continued to go up, stalled, went like this, boom. Okay, now all 3 survived. The gal in the back took him 45 minutes to get her out with the bars of life and the jugs of life, and the recovery was horrible. They were in for a long time. I went to visit Stephen in the hospital room, and he was in the hospital in Dallas. And I went out, I peeked in the window, I saw his family was there. I saw him literally, you know the mummy wrap? That's what he looked like. His big toe was out, he was mummy wrapped the rest of the time, tubes coming in all over the place, and he was unconscious when I walked in. And I introduced myself, and I said, I'm from Thrust Flight, I came here to visit your son. And I don't know if they were glaring daggers at me or what, but they were clearly in a terrible state. He was in serious shape. They told him, they said, Bob, he's in and out, occasionally he'll wake up and be lucid, but he'll go right back to sleep. And at that minute, he woke up, he said, oh Mom, Bob Choate's here to visit, and bang, he went out like a light. So I visited with him for about 15 or 20 minutes and left. Now, the girl in the back seat was in the next room, and I peeked in her. No family was there, the room was dim, and she had that same mummy wrap, and she was there a long time. Okay, now wait a minute, let me get this right. There was nothing wrong with the airplane. This was an experienced pilot, and he was a flight instructor, and he knew all this stuff. What the heck happened? So we're trying to quarterback it after the event, right? Did the passenger seat slide back, changing the dynamics in the aircraft? No, it didn't. It's got the Cessna locks on. The R's don't do that anymore, right? They don't do that. Nope, it was pilot error. It was pilot error. That happened. Now, how many of you stalled at 172? Okay, we all have, okay? You have to work at it to stall it, right? And that makes you believe, oh, this airplane's hard to stall. I mean, I have to really work at it. I probably won't stall it because, man, I'm getting great feedback and all this stuff. Believe me, you can put that in a regime where you won't feel it. The next thing you know, that airplane stopped flying, low airspeed, rudder cocked just slightly, maybe yoke down. Next thing you know, and of course our 4 forces help out as well. And you're going down. So control movement is really the first key, and something the flight instructor, when you're doing your VFI, is going to look at. How do you manage the controls? Okay, so what airplane is this? Isn't that a beauty? Talk about yoke movement. Look at that.
Is that a Howard?
Yes, it is. It is. In fact, the Howard. It's the Howard DGA. DGA stands for Damn Good Airplane. Seriously, that's it. I think it was Bennett Howard is the fellow that put these together. And of course, the Howard 500 is one of the most beautiful corporate airliners. There's 2 still flying, both owned by one guy. Okay. And they're gorgeous. And these airplanes are works of art. I mean, they're very comfortable with the passengers. Do you all like roll down windows? Yeah, it's like that. It's wonderful aircraft. So, moving on. I want to talk about trim. Trim. Let's take a look. We got trim and a Piper. I have to tell you, when I had my tri-pacer, I just thought that was so sexy. I just hit that trim, move that trim around, and back it off a little bit. It was great. We got trim on a 172. Right here's the trim on a 172. Hey, trim on a 737. That's what it looks like on a 737. Remember those trim things? Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are big. Those are heavily weighted wheels that really can get a lot of momentum up. There's 2 of them. There's one on the pilot and the co-pilot's side. And of course, this is the one on the Cardinal. I had to put it in because you know what happens is you can have your hand on the throttle and your thumb on the trim wheel. Okay? Eat your hearts out. So why is it that we teach pitch, power, trim? Pitch, forward on the yoke, okay? Now I'm going to bring that power back, and now I'm going to trim. But the way we all do it, okay, maybe one or two of you don't, but the rest of you do. We experienced pilots do pitch, trim, power, trim. Think about it. What's going on with the student is I want him to feel the full control force so he can learn what it feels like to release the control pressure on the trim. So if he were going to do pitch and then take some out right away and then change the power, now he doesn't have much control force to trim out and he won't recognize it. So we teach that pitch, power, trim. That's the way we teach it. But now that we're experienced, we know what it feels like on our airplane. We can tell by touch. We augment that with sight, of course. But that's the way we do it. So when we're learning, we want that full force of the control surfaces to trim out. But we do pitch, trim, power, trim, which is fine. When do we trim? Let's talk about takeoff trim. Now, how many of you have taken off with the trim where you left it when you're landing, which would be nose up? Anybody done that?
Like I did in
I've done it. Yeah.
Everybody's done that once.
So it's pretty exciting, isn't it? Because you realize that in the first, and now you're pushing like crazy on the yoke forward to try to make up the difference and trimming like crazy. So, yep.
It gets your attention pretty quick.
Gets your attention pretty quick. Also, what happens is as planes get older, the cables loosen up, things just change a little bit. So you know that nice little spot they've got on the trim control that says take off, right? Well, it may not be. You'll find it for your aircraft. Mine's about 1/4 inch below where it says take off on mine. And I do that, it's fine. Trim on landing. Here's a very interesting one. How many of you do not trim on landing? Anybody does not trim on landing? Okay. Now, you're not going to believe this, but this is absolutely true, and it's driven me crazy as an instructor. There are schools that teach do not trim on landing. Okay? Now, why? What are they afraid of?
Go around.
Yeah, the go-around. They're afraid of the go-around, right? Because if I'm not trimmed and I add power, then I won't have this, and this is a terrible thing to teach. So what we want to do is make sure that we trim on landing, and I'm going to talk about that stall here in a minute. And it's kind of there's some plane specifics around that. For example, on the Cardinal, when you're landing a Cardinal, as you're flaring and coming down the chute, crossing over the runway, getting ready to flare, right in that area, you're going full nose up trim on the Cardinal. Okay, you want full nose up trim. Now, not every plane needs full nose up trim on the flare, but some do, some don't, and you know where that is on your airplane and trim that appropriately because you're trained on the go-around and know that forward pressure is the key. We'll come back to that. This is a personal favorite, trim on simulated engine out. So think about this. It's most fun. You have fun as an instructor. And so this is kind of fun. I've got my student, maybe he's a private pilot that's going for the commercial now. And, well, he knows all that private pilot stuff, and let's see if we can hone this up a little bit on the commercial. So we're flying along, and of course, I'm sitting in the right-hand seat, and I'll take, mischievous, the misdirecting hand, and I'll reach across in front of him and says, is that an airplane? And he's going to look like that over there, and I'm going to put the hand on the power and pull it back. Okay? So, you've just lost an engine. Well, what are we supposed to do? Okay, we're flying along, we lose an engine. What's the first thing we do?
Trim for flat.
Yeah, trim for glide speed. I'm going to pitch. I'm not going to pitch like this. I'm going to pitch smoothly to glide speed as I trim to glide speed. Now, the whole concept of that is now that I'm at glide speed and trim for that gives me time to pay attention to some other things, so I don't have to religiously hold that yoke watching the airspeed and keeping it right at glide speed. I'm going to trim for that. And then I continue on, locate a landing, and go down the checklist, right? Well, think about that. how many of you have actually experimented with your plane recently and kind of do a little contest with yourself, pull that power, and then start the clock, and see how long it takes you to transition the yoke and trim for glide speed. So what I see with the students that never practice this, you have to practice to demonstrate the entire maneuver, which is the entire process of a controlled engine out, serial controlled engine out. But what I don't want to do is that, right? Because I mean, I want as much of this as I can get. And so what happens is, typically I'll see 500-600 feet go by before, oh, hey, there we go, glide speed. Congratulations. Okay, and so let's take a look at that and just practice that. Power, pitch, trim. Power, pitch, trim. You get that down 100 feet, 150 feet, something like that. And that's one thing you can do for yourself that's really nice. Now remember, it's not that bad because you're at cruise. Also practice it on takeoff, because there's a slight difference in the trim forces you need to accommodate. But practice that and get that down to the minimum amount of altitude loss that you can, because that pays big dividends down the road. Anybody ever have to do an emergency landing? Got to power off, do an emergency landing? Okay, yes sir, why don't you tell us about it?
I just lost an engine going out of Nacogdoches, lost about 50% of the power. Turned out it broke a valve.
Whew, that's pretty far, isn't it?
And unfortunately I had enough altitude. It wasn't a real big deal. It was a little scary. But
Was it a twin or a single?
No, just single 172.
172? Yeah.
And made a U-turn and got back and landed.
Okay, good. You made the, you want to climb out from takeoff? Oh, perfect. Okay, we'll come back to that. Good. Okay. Yeah, that's the outcome we all want. Having enough altitude. Let's look at this next one. I want to talk about stalls. All right, now with private pilot, what do we learn as private pilot? We learn approach stall, we learn departure stall, right? And yeah, that's the two I'm going to demonstrate. Now, it's important stuff, right? Because we're teaching them to stall and do full recovery, and we all have to demonstrate that when we're doing a VFR, because we're always tested to the highest level of our competency of our license on the VFR, and you know you're doing stalls as part of it. So we're going to do the approach stall, and we're really doing two things, right? Once, we want to make sure we can recover from it. Same thing with the departure stall. But the most important thing is that we're recognizing it. Because we never actually want to stall this thing, right? So we want to be able to recognize that stall. Now, that's great training. But the fact of the matter is that it's not that difficult to have pre-stall recognition for those two stalls. It's the accelerated stalls that bite. Now, if we look at the accelerated stalls, there's really a few variations of those. Now, for those of you who's commercial pilot, okay, commercial pilots, okay, so you all had to demonstrate this commercial pilot, the quote, accelerated stall. So if I looked in the rule book about, I don't know, I could look at the PAC, for example, and see what is an accelerated stall, how does it work. It's going to describe, you're basically going to bank the airplane 45 degrees, and then you're going to change the attitude with the yoke, and you'll feel, you don't want a full stall, right? You're going to feel the onset of a stall, which is pretty much, in a Cessna or a Piper, pretty pronounced. You'll feel it. The airplane will actually shudder. You'll feel that stall. So you're going to learn that. Now the trick on that one is don't do it at cruise. Back that puppy down to 80 knots, 75 knots, something like that, and then do it. Because remember, it doesn't matter the airspeed. And you're stalling at, what, 40 knots, 30 knots above what is the control stall for an approach stall or departure stall. Okay, there's a great sentence in the PHAC, and it talks about stalls. And it says, once you get out of 1G unaccelerated flight, all the rules are off. Okay? So all that neat stuff you learned about stalls, we're talking about, we're in that 1G envelope on those two approach and departure. When you're in accelerated stalls, several things happen. First of all, we teach them to demonstrate that you can stall at any attitude and any airspeed. Okay? and it comes on you very fast, and in some planes can be totally unexpected. Now, the Pipers and the Cessnas will still give you warning, but as you move up the chain, like, don't go do this in your Bonanza, okay? Don't do it in your Mooney. It'll be a pretty exciting time. So let's think about this. The accelerated stall, I'm going to slow it down. I'm simply going to bank 45 degrees. Now I'm going to leave left rudder in, and I'm going to leave left yoke in. And I'm just going to smoothly pull back on the yoke, and the airplane's going to shudder, just like that. And I'm immediately going to go to full stall recovery. Level the wings, full power, and nose DUIs and all of that recovery. So that is the one that, as our first introduction as commercial pilots to the accelerated stalls. And unfortunately, we mostly think of that as the accelerated stall. But wait, it's only one of the accelerated stalls. We have other accelerated stalls. We have the trim stall. The full name of the trim stall is the accelerated trim stall. Okay? We have the secondary stall. Is an accelerated stall. And the cross control stall is an accelerated stall. So let's see if we can get ourselves, let's talk about the trim stall, because we were talking about that a minute ago. What we've done is, we were coming down, we are down to the point where we've flown down the runway, we're flying pretty much parallel to the runway. Everything looks great. You're trimmed, hey, let's say we're trimmed full nose up, airspeed's low, and the instructor, darn him, that darn instructor, he goes, go around, go around, go around. Okay? So obviously what we want to do is we want to bring power forward smoothly and promptly, but we also want to make sure we've got forward pressure, holding that forward pressure, because we're going to hold that plane level as the airspeed builds. If we fail to do that, that's where we get the trim stall. That's why we set the trim stall up. Altitude, 3,500 feet. Trim for final approach on landing. Full flaps, let's say 60, 65 knots coming downhill in a Cessna. And as the flight instructor, we're going to magnify the effects a little bit, because we're using this as a demonstrated stall the first time through. So I'm in the right seat, my student's in the left seat. And what I'm doing is I've actually trimmed more nose up, and I'm making up the difference by holding forward pressure. So what happens is, I know now that the minute I release the forward pressure, this puppy's going to go like that. Okay? So I'm spring loading the reaction, right? Now, the commercial pilot, I'm going to teach him to do the whole thing, but he's not going to spring load it. But I want to make sure he really sees that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say, okay, here's what I want you to do. I will demonstrate it, but I want you to do the recovery. So I want you to take your hands and hold them about 2 inches behind the yoke. Okay? And I'm going to bring the plane down, and I'm going to say go around. I'm going to add full power, and I'm moving my hands back off the yoke now. So the yoke actually snaps right back into their hands. And of course, what do you think I'm saying to the student at this point? Forward pressure, forward pressure, more forward pressure, forward pressure. Okay? Okay, come on. It's 100 and what? 60, 180 horsepower engine, 76 inch prop, with, and it's probably either combo, it's probably combo props, probably not a climb prop. And, but son of a gun, that can make a huge difference. Think about those 320 horsepower, an 03, what's the L320, whatever it is. And it could be magnified, it gets magnified. Well, anyway, so that's a very dramatic transition. So what we really got them doing now as a commercial pilot, they really know they got to do that. And then we're going to have them practice that. We're not going to full stall that airplane, because that would be an accelerated, that would be a full accelerated stall, and that would be pretty exciting. Has anybody done an inverted accelerated stall?
No.
Okay, let me tell you how you can get into it easily, and you can get sold on this, and the next thing you know, it's a huge surprise. So here we are. It's a VFR day. We're cruising along at 5,500 feet. And you know something? I just looked at my GPS at the winds aloft. I have more of a tail at 7,500 feet. So I'm going to go to 7,500 feet. But I got my friends in the plane, so I'm going to show them a little something. Because I know there's no possible way I can stall, because this airplane, I've been flying it, no worries, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to climb. The first thing I'm going to do is put my nose down. Okay? Interesting climb, isn't it? Because I'm only going 110 knots. I mean, it's a 172, right? And I'm going to get 120 knots in the dial. Now, right now, I'm full power, and I'm going to pull back on that yoke because I'm going to zoom climb. I'm zoom climbing. Look at me, zoom climbing. Okay? Zoom climb. And here's my intention. I know I'm not going to get 2,000 feet out of zoom climb, but I'll bet I can get 1,000, right? So here we go, zoom climb. Zoom climb just like this, and I know that as soon as I recognize the onset of stall, I'll just push that yoke forward, stabilize it, and then I'll continue my climb. But I probably need 800 to 1,000 feet in no time. I'm halfway there. I'm going to be with that tailwind. Things are going to be great. Except it didn't quite work out that way. Because what I did was, I just moved out of what? On 1G, unaccelerated flight. I'm so long. Here we go. Bam, I'm going like this. And the next thing that happens, follow this, Mr. Einstein. Energy in, energy out. What does it look like? Well, I went like this, I zoomed that way, and it's going to go bang. It's going to go just like that, bang. And it's going to drop lower than you've ever expected. It's not going to do this, but it's going to be relatively, it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that. And it's just going to drop like that. Now, oops, I'm surprised. So what am I going to do next?
Clean up your pastor's mess.
Yeah, they're not finding me again. I'm going to pull back on that yoke, right? And because I was scared, because I've never seen this before, I'm going to pull back pretty quick. But what have I just done? Secondary stall. So that is the secondary stall process. But we don't do the zoom climb. So if you're flying with anybody and they want to do that zoom, the minute they're zooming, they're outside of 1G unaccelerated flight. And that means accelerated, you're in the area of accelerated stalls can happen. And so here we go, we're going to teach it. We're going to do a climb out at VY. Okay, and then we're just going to, I'm distracted. I'm going to bring the airplane back till the nose drops. Okay, now this is not a secondary stall. Come up, the nose drops. Come down, recover. Come back, stall it again. That'd be a second stall. Okay, that's not the secondary stall. Okay, so let's do a secondary stall. Here we go. I'm coming up, climbing up. Here we go. Here's my first stall right there. Nose drops right there. I'm pulling back again, and I'm gonna get the drop right there. Now that drop is accompanied by 99% of the time a left wing drop. Why? Because you were being good. You were keeping the rudder, hey diddle diddle ball in the middle coming up like this. It looked pretty good. Then I got my first drop, and then I pulled back like that. What did I do? Well, we all do it. We inadvertently relax pressure on the right rudder. And if we don't have right rudder, and we're lower speed and we're climbing, the four forces, well, three of them are left turning tendencies, one of them is not, but the four forces take over, and bang, there goes your wing. Okay? And then we step on the opposite rudder. It goes like this. No, opposite rudder. Okay, so let's do it, hit the wrong rudder. Don't be excited. So that's the dynamic of the secondary stall. And the way you get that secondary stall is messing around. It's that zoom climb. Because you put the energy in. The last one I want to talk about is and my personal favorite, by the way, is the cross control stall. Now, what I'd like you to do, think about this. Think about the things we're talking about. You're going to put together a program for your next VFR. Or you got excited about this and you want to just grab a co-conspirator, licensed pilot, or better yet, a flight instructor, and get up and run through some of these things. If you haven't done them recently, why? Because these are the things that actually bite you. The cross control stall, we never practice it, but it's the one that gets us, right? So here it is. Here's my runway right here. Here's my runway. Let's say I'm on base, and I've got 20 degrees flaps down, coming down. I'm making my turn to final, and I mean, all of us, we pretty much go to 30 degrees in the turn, don't we? Most of us, okay? Very frequent. So now we're turning like this. Well, wait a minute. There's the center line. There's the problem, okay? No, I can do this. Watch, I can do that. All I have to do is hold this bank in. I'll crank the yoke over to the left, and I'm going to fly back over here. Now here's the runway. I'm getting over here, oh, look, at this rate, I'm gonna go by it, I'm gonna have to start leveling that out. So I'm gonna leave the right rudder in, and I'm going to move my yoke to the right. Okay? I've just put cross controls in at low airspeed. Okay, now the only thing I need to do now, because now we're in accelerated stall, remember, at any airspeed, any attitude. If I'm not holding this thing, puppy, down, 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 which people aren't, because they're gonna try to level. The minute I level, or even a little bit before level, that's when the stall occurs. Right there, that's the base to final cross control stall. So what I want you to do is practice that with an instructor. Do that with an instructor. 3,500 feet, find a straight road in the direction of the wind. So you're gonna go in the direction of the wind, set yourself up on a high base, go ahead and fly towards that road, and just as you get there, just before you get there, you know, go 10, 20, 30, maintain your altitude, so you keep a little power on. But once you get toward, almost to the extended center line, get the power off, or back to whatever your approach power is. You got 30 degrees, pick up your descent, and just go ahead and fly right high and center line. And then go ahead and give it full left rudder and give it left aileron. You're coming down fine. Now when you get to this point here, see where I am relative to the runway? What I want you to do is leave the left rudder in and just consciously go. And now I'm crossing controls, left rudder's down. I'm going to go just like that. I'm going to cross the whole thing, okay? I'm going to cross it. And then I'm going to just, I'm not going to jerk back, but I'm going to pull back smoothly, just like that. The airplane's going to go like this, and you're going to feel, bam, bam, that plane shudder 2 to 3 times. That's eminent stall, and immediately get that puppy back and straight into a level dive and bring it out with full stall recovery. But you got to see what that looks like, and you got to see what it feels like, because that's the one that bites us. And how do I know? Because Mr. Dahl said so. That's how I know. The problem with the Dahl report is it isn't all young trainee pilots. You know, it's guys our age as well. Questions on those stalls? PHAC is your source of information on those, great source. Airplane information, the manual, a good one. Okay, sir.
Yeah, the cross control stall has always been like, I mean, that kind of got hammered into my brain early, and I've sworn that will never happen to me, and I've never, I mean, I focus, that's just like just one thing is a personal nightmare. And so, but I've never done it. And so can you describe, I mean, you said bang, bang on the top. I've never practiced it because I think that's how people get killed. And you're saying it's okay to practice a cross control stall?
So what you can do is,
3,500 feet.
Yeah, well, no, I get the 3,500 feet part. I'll probably be 5,500, but go ahead.
so
I want to know
you
what
put your finger on something it's a problem in the industry. Because guess who's afraid of the cross control stall? Flight instructors. Flight instructors. That's why when I ran my academy, we would just drill in on that cross control stall. And again, what we're going to do is be configured for landing, crossover center line. Okay, now I'm going to pick up my descent rate. The reason I'm not doing it back here is I don't want to get down low before I cross over. I want to keep my altitude. So what's going to happen if this thing spins? I'm going to do one of these things, you know, just come out and half turn it out. But so what I'm going to do is now I'm coming down, 70 knots trimmed. I'm going to now turn back toward the runway, and to magnify that to make sure it works when you want it, because if you like do mamby-pamby inputs on many of these airplanes, the wings are very efficient, you won't get the positive signal for that. I want you to see what that is. And I'm talking about the fact that 172s, the wing looks the same, but there's been tweaks in the wings over the year. So if you're doing a brand new 172 versus a 76 172, the 76 will do it readily, easily. The new one, you got to do this full routine, full left rudder, full right yoke.
I guess my question is, I'm wanting a description of how sudden it is and what it feels like. I get all that.
Okay, so
I
here we
understand
go.
how it works.
Now I'm going to cross the controls. I'm going to pull back. Now here's what's going to happen. I got full left rudder, full left yoke. So I'm going to pull back, and once it's crossed, I'm not going to pull here.
Right.
I'm going to cross and pull, and so watch this. Boom! Right there, right there. The airplane shudders.
Okay.
It's a big shudder.
There is a warning. It's not just, okay, now you're upside down.
There's a very clear warning in the 100 series Cessna's Piper Cherokee series. You move up the chain,
To a Malibu.
Malibu, Mooney, Grumman, A5,
260, yeah.
you know, you could be upside down pretty quick.
Okay.
And that's why we trained in those airplanes. And they're really great. And so you've got two great flight instructors here that can show you how that works. And I'm telling you, if you've never done this, please put it in your next biannual. Make sure it's an instructor that knows how to do it. Because one of the biggest problems we had was the instructors were afraid of that stall. And rightly so. That's why you have to learn how to do it correctly. And recognize that stall. It's the landing pattern and airspeeds. I'm running over. I'll try to move it through here. There's a lot of things we can talk about that. You know most of them. What I really want to focus on right here is wind awareness. How many are sailors? How many sailors do I have? Sailor. Okay, sailors from sailors. Great. Okay. So a sailor has to be wind aware. So let's say I'm sailing my boat along. I've got my mast, I've got my boom out here, and the wind's coming this way, and I want to turn my boat in the opposite direction. I have two choices for the maneuver. What's one of them? Come around. Come about. Sure, come around, come about. And the other one is a jibe. The one is a jibe. How do I know which is which? Okay, here we do. Let's bring the boat about. We're coming around. The captain goes, ready about. The mate will say, ready about. Captain will go hard to lead. What's he doing? He's going to put the wheel over to the leeward side. The wind's coming this way, the lead, the non-windward side. That means the boat's going to turn this way. That means the stern of the boat passes through the wind. So it's a very gentle maneuver in terms of reversing the direction of the boat. Jibe, the bow of the boat passes through the wind. Jibe ho. There's more energy in this one. That's saying, jibe ho, watch out. What are you watching for? The minute, you got it exactly right. So the minute that nose goes through, those booms move and they move fast. And you're doing this. You're ducking the boom. Either that or you're swimming. Or you're dizzy. With a concussion. With a concussion, yeah. You don't have to be hit by a boom once. So they are by nature wind aware. Well, one of the things that I found with people I do DFRs with, even some experienced pilots, but mostly with the student training, they have no concept of wind awareness other than the technical concept. So let's say that I'm 10 miles away from the airport, I make that first call, 10 miles north, inbound, landing with the numbers. I've got the ATIS. So when they finish that call, I say, okay, so what's your crosswind? And I said, okay. They say, I've got 10 knots, about 10 degrees from the left. Okay, all right. And which side of the runway are you going to be on? Okay, so where's the nose going to be pointing on downwind? Where's the nose going to be pointing on crosswind or base? And where's the nose going to be pointing on final? Okay, and given that you're going to have a crosswind on final, what are you expecting to happen in that crosswind? That's wind awareness. So before I get to the airport, because, this is Texas. Summer, it's hard to find a wind in summer, but when you do find a wind here in the spring, especially in the fall, you get pretty good winds. So you line up parallel, the next thing you know you're out here, or the next thing you know you're over here. Over here is a real problem because that's almost a guaranteed go around, right? And so I want them to know that. This comes into This transitions into a conversation on simulated engine failure. So, when was the last time you did a landing, just a regular landing, pull the power at the cut point or at the parallel numbers, and actually brought it in without using power? Has anybody done that recently? Okay, it's a great thing to do. Now, back when I learned, back in the early 60s, that's how they taught us every landing was to be made. And it was years later, I was taking the BFR, and they says, don't you do gradual power reduction? I said, I have no idea what it is. So anyway, but it's something we have to practice today. And it's pretty easy. No wind, it's pretty darn easy. Just no wind, you can actually fly a nice squared off pattern, and just don't go too far down that way. And make sure you use the flaps correctly. Don't put them all in the beginning because that's usually not good because you're going to end up short. But the minute I've got wind, I've got a problem. Now the problem is I'm landing into the wind. Well, that's good to do, right? But that means on downwind it's pushing me. So if I got 15 knots on the tail, this becomes an eye-hand coordination kind of experience rationalization, right? So given my experience, I'm going really fast here, I'm pulling the power. Now if I delay, you know, and I'm going north, I could be in Oklahoma before I turn my base, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to make that decision where to turn base. It's not the 45 degree off the wing. That, and it's, by the way, it's called a power off 180 for a reason. They're really, the book shows it as a square, because you do make a 180 degree turn. The military flies it as a 180. The nice thing about the 180 is you have the airport in sight the entire time. And the nice thing about the 180 is, if you are on, let me just draw quickly on the board. If I have a runway, here's my downwind. The wind is coming like this, 15 knots. So I fly to here and I start my turn, and I can see that I'm going to be short right here, right? What I can always do is I can do this, right? And I can kick it over toward the end. So I've got a whole bag of tricks for this 180. Includes using ground effect as a last-ditch effort. But what I want you to do is practice some of these power-off 180s. Just go do it in the landing pattern a few times. It's going to come back to you pretty quickly. But what I really want you to do is I'd like you to go up with an instructor, and I'd like them to situate you so that you have a simulated engine failure, and they're going to put you somewhere close to an airport that in their judgment, if you did everything right, you would be able to touch down and land on that airport. Okay? Please do it in Piper's and 100 series Cessnas. Okay? You can do this in your Beechcraft, but I would maybe practice on something a little smaller. And so what you're going to find is that all of your wind awareness training is really going to come in handy there, because you're going to have to figure out that wind really quickly. If you've got a howling headwind, then there's several things that come into play here. Number one, we get places on ground speed, right? I get there in airspeed, and if there's no wind, airspeed and my ground speed should be remarkably similar, right? Really close. Okay, but in landing, I'm always going, in theory, except on some instrument approaches, I'm always going to have a headwind. Right? Now, what that means is that I have to know when to put my flaps down. I need to know when to put my nose down to gain ground. Because I could be sitting there with everything done exactly by the book with 56 knots on the dial, and there's no way I'm going to make it, right? So that whole exercise of judgment, of using judgment in that situation, is what we want to train. That's what we want to train. And by the way, it's a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun. You could even do a contest board, you know, and see who did what. That'll be fun. But those are the ones that get you, because what's the problem with actual unplanned landings? Is you're carrying too much speed into the end of that approach, because you picked that. What we see is all the time. Everybody's overshooting. We're coming down like that, so I've just changed my mind. It's going to be the next field. You know, the one over those trees. They looked like they were 20 feet high until they got down here, and now they look like they're 40. By the way, your trees are huge down here. We don't have those big trees out in Allen, Addison area. You know, you're a lovely place out here. Okay, crosswind landings. So I already talked about, let's make sure we're planning that base to final turn so we know exactly what to expect. How about this? Does anybody use a wing low technique from the moment they get on final, get oriented, and do wing low all the way down? Okay, so that's a legitimate technique. The other one is the crab transition to a wing low. So that's basically a crab transitioning to a forward slip. That wing low is a forward slip. I'm sorry, not forward slip, side slip. Side slip. Thank you. Side slip. And so, what would I want? I want you to be able to do either. I want you to be able to do either, because you probably haven't done the wing low for a while. And go ahead and do that. Now, please try to find at least 8 knots and do it. And also, most of you are doing the crab transition to the wing low. So you've got that neat little kind of the aileron, hip roll, rudder move, that looks pretty sexy, getting the airplane down. I mean, this guy clearly has his act together here, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, they can't do that wing low in the B-52 because the wings are so darn big. So they put crosswind gear on it. So the Air Coupe and the B-52 have crosswind landing gear. Okay? And the B-52 wing, it isn't really high wing. It's on top of the airplane, but it ain't that high, right? It's size. On crosswinds, we're not trying to grease it on. We're not trying to land at this lowest airspeed possible to grease it on, because you're going to be at the mercy of the wind in that case. You are going to carry out that extra speed you need to do that. I just want to point out, remember this thing about adding half the gust factor to your approach speed? If the gust, so I got a 10 knot gust, half the gust factor, I'm going to add 5. So if my approach speed is, X, I'm going to add 5 to that. Now, there's a little bit of a trap there. For example, for you, let's say if you're flying 172, what is the actual stall speed, full flap configuration of the stall speed? It could be like 42 to 47, depending on the year. Right? So let's say it's 42. Okay? And so what they want you to do is, if I was landing at 42 and there are those gusts, I would add 5 knots to that, and I'd bring it in, all the numbers at 47. Okay? But wait, did we land at 172 at 47? When we're coming downhill on final, what's our airspeed?
60?
Yeah, 65, 60, gradual power reduction. So what the book recommends you land at in terms of airspeed already has that gust factor built in. So don't go adding it on top of that number. Not true with every airplane, right? Not true like the Piper Cub. You've seen the Piper Cub POH, both sides of it. I'm serious. So you want that suspend. You need that airspeed to maintain the crew controllability to fly it basically on the runway. And if it's a prompt, a little bit of an abrupt arrival, heck, that's why they built that nice landing gear. We're not going to splay the gear, flatten it, and bounce back up 10 feet. We're just going to add maybe a little firm arrival. That's fine on crosswinds. The more the merrier. In the spring, we get nice crosswinds. What I'd like you to do is, see, if you wait for your BFR, you're not going to have a crosswind. Wait for a crosswind day, call up, schedule an instructor, and go out there and go to a crosswind runway. Okay, find a runway. This would be great if you could find one with a crosswind the plane cannot land in. Okay, that's okay. Set up the approach. Now, don't take it all the way down. Don't get that close to the ground and cut it off at around 1,000, right? Because what you're looking at as you come in on final, what you're going to see is I don't have enough rudder to maintain center line, right? So no matter what I do with my ailerons and rudder, I cannot maintain center line. It's blowing me off, so I know I can't land there. But if it's a strong crosswind and you can maintain that, you can land there. And take that opportunity to land in those high crosswinds. And I remember I was flying a Senate Fund one year. I was in, we were at the Cardinal, and we went into Hilton Head. Beautiful place. I wouldn't go in there now. I mean, it costs you money just to fly by it now. And but it had a rip-roar 20-knot crosswind on the runway. Now, where am I? I just flew out of Norwood, Massachusetts. Somebody is at the end of their legal range, right? So I have to land here. And so we put it down. And you know something? All those things they taught you, that works. It'll work. You can land it higher than the demonstrated stuff, up as long as you have that rudder authority. By the way, the Cardinal's got fantastic. It's a big rudder on that. Got a lot of rudder authority. So it was actually an uneventful landing using standard technique. But I want you to see what it looks like when you can't land, losing that rudder. Not enough rudder for me. And I want you to get back and experience some of those high crosswind landings, and do that. Now, interesting enough, all my students from the Pacific Northwest don't have a problem with crosswinds, so because it's gusty up there. Boy, they have been. Okay, the impossible turn. I want to talk about that for a minute, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here. So, AOPA. Go ahead and Google AOPA impossible turn. Barry Shreve has written, and this is the points he makes from it, a procedure to do the impossible turn. I've been teaching that for quite a while. I practice that routinely with my airplane. And on a 172, I'll tell you right now, not at girls, pardon me, 2 in the front seat, 500 AGL, I can make it. But only with training. 750, I can do it every time, no problem. Anything higher than that, I'm good. Cardinal, Still working on it. Right now I'm at 1,000 feet of the Cardinal. It's a clean airplane that likes to build airspeed quick. But I haven't got the Cardinal down to where I want it yet. But every plane, there's an altitude at which you can actually make that decision and come back. So here's the steps. Set up on a cardinal heading. I'd like to find a road that's kind of into the wind, grab myself 3,500 feet, right? And what you're going to do is say, well, let's say I start at 2,000 feet. So here's my road, and I'm going to fly down that road. What I'm going to do is reduce my power, maybe do a little slow flight. Slow flight's a good way to enter this. Recover and come back with the power and pick up VY. So I'm climbing out of VY. Now, I'm at 2,000 on the altimeter. At 3,000 on the altimeter, I'm going to pull the power. Okay? And now what I'm going to do, according to this, and this works exactly, I'm going to count 5 seconds. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, just like in the movie, right? 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. And then I'm going to make a coordinated 45-degree turn, pitching to glide speed. Pitch to glide speed while making a coordinated 45-degree turn. Now I'm going to make a total of 270 degrees of turn. It's going to look like this. I took off, I've counted 5 seconds. First thing I've done is I've reversed course 180 degrees. Now, my goal is to be on this line here above 2,000 feet. Remember, that was my mark. I said, high hosey, the runway's at 2,000 feet. If I can do that, then I know I could have landed here. But to do that, I now have to make a 45-degree turn here, and then I have to make a 45-degree turn here. So I've got 180, 45, 45, that's 270 degrees of turn. And I have to be able to get that 270-degree turn up. So, and I do that in the 45-degree bank. And as I complete here, I can roll the wings level. Now, because you're simulating an engine out, don't forget to do the other stuff, or at least walk through it on a flow, because you're not going to land with master and mags on, full power and all that stuff, right? But you're not going to turn your mags off till you get your flaps down. That's a whoops, okay? And see if you can do that. Now, the technique here is to start at 1,000 feet. If it doesn't work at 1,000 feet, move it to 1,500. And then practice to move it back till you can do that. Then, get the plane to gross and do it again at gross. So you've got the 2 sides of your envelope. Okay? Thrust flight. Young lady, flight instructor, flying a sport aircraft. It was a demo flight. I had just taken off on 1.5. Was climbing out and the engine sputtered. Okay? The answer to that is called ethanol. Okay? Moved away from that right away. This was the tragedy. So anyway, so what she did was, remember we have a parachute in the airplane. She came back, made a 180-degree turn. Now, at that point, you could pull the parachute at 200 plus. I would have pulled the parachute. She was lined up for a perfect landing on the taxiway, which was full of airplanes. Now, personally, with my experience, I'd have just landed on the grass between the runways. Okay? But what she should have done is pull the chute. Okay? Now she decided to, and she's coming down like this, and now she's going to land on the runway. Well, now there's planes starting a takeoff at the other end of the runway. So she attempts another low altitude turn, and it's an accelerated stall, goes in. Both of them survive. The passenger was chewed up pretty badly. The young lady is not flying anymore. She's a smart cookie, and she just graduated college, and she has an engineering degree. She's pursuing engineering. By the way, Stephen from that first accident is now a dispatcher because he'll never fly again. So these things happen to the best of people at the worst of times, sir.
Could you go back for everybody and just explain what the 5 seconds is if they didn't catch that?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't explain it right.
Reaction time.
It's reaction time. What was the movie with Tom Hanks in for the landing on the Hudson River?
Sully.
Sully.
Sully. Remember in the movie where they finally convinced them that you don't immediately react. Give it 5 seconds. And it made all the difference because then nobody could put the plane down in the Sims.
Right.
And this is true, because it takes a while for you to react to this. So if I say, you know, Jonathan, we're going up, and the first thing we're gonna do is, I'm gonna pull your power at altitude, and you're gonna try to do an emergency landing. You're ready for it, so you're expecting it. But that's not the way the plane works, right?
No.
And so that 5 seconds is really key. And don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Really, 1, 2, and go through there. And otherwise, because it won't be real. And you need to be real because you made the return. You had how much altitude did you have?
Honestly, I don't know.
Well, you had enough to make it.
But there was trees ahead, and even if I didn't make the runway, everything on that airport is smoother than those trees up ahead.
So you had some options.
So I just went ahead and did it,
Yeah.
and honestly, my problem was I got there too soon. When I got back to the runway, I was at the middle of the runway. I had to make another 90-degree turn to the right and try to get stopped before the end of the runway. I got there too soon instead of, normally you think you're not going to get there in time.
That's exactly right. That's right. That's why the effective altitude is so important. And so if you practice at 1,500 feet, you're going to have that problem every time, right? And so now what do? Figure that out. Get the right altitude and figure that out. And you're in pretty good shape. Now remember, if there's more than one runway, you may not have to turn 180 degrees.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you apply wind awareness to the impossible turn?
Yes, you can. So here's the deal. If you're taking off into a direct headwind, you can turn either way. It really depends. If I've got a runway if I want to turn right, there's a runway there, I'm doing it. And, or I'll turn left. Where's the taxiway? Is the taxiway on the left or the right? Is somebody on the taxiway? There's all kinds of opportunities. But if I've got a crosswind, that's going to make a difference. So if you're doing a downwind turn, it's going to push you. It's going to push you and you're going to have to come back. You're going to have a crosswind. So try to turn into the wind. Try to turn into the wind. Good question. Where's all this going? I'd like you to identify some of the things we talked about, put together a plan with the instructor and fly. And do this, because some of these things, I'm telling you, the accelerated stalls and the possible turn, if you don't do anything with that, I would praise you till the cows come in, and around here they come in pretty regularly. So take a look at this. There's an FAA construct called the Focus Flight Review. Has anybody heard about it? Google Focus Flight Review. Now, these are some of the topical areas that are in there. Takeoff and landings, go-arounds. There's one, for instance, efficiency. I've just done 2 of these IPCs using the Focus Flight Review. It's very nice. What happens is you get a little homework. You got to look at a video, a couple of videos, take a quiz, and then they've got the questions already set up, and you can decide which ones you want to deal with and what emergencies you want to go with. Review with your flight instructor, and have them incorporate in there. Go through the whole thing. He has a check mark. Then he goes on to then the student submits that under the Focus Flight Review. So it's a program the FAA's put together. Sit with the flight instructor, elect the things you want to do, have the flight instructor do that with you, and anything else he needs to do to satisfy proficiency and safety. And at the end, your student will fill out something on the FAA website. You will get a notice in your mail. You go to essentially an IACRA type of deal. It's part of the WINGS program, and you fill that out, and the student gets WINGS credit, so you will get WINGS credit for that. So